In this video, I'm going to be testing and reviewing the Freewell Magnetic Quick Swap ND filter system. So, how well do they work? And what's the color like straight out of the camera? Find out next. You may or may not have heard of Freewell filters, but they make a range of filters for things like action cameras, drones, phones, and photographic cameras. For the last 2 weeks, I've been out testing these magnetic ND filters on both my Nikon D850 and Z7 cameras. I was testing for things like color cast straight out of the camera, any sort of image degradation, vignetting, and ease of use. So in this Freewell magnetic ND filter set, I have the ND64, that's the ND1000 in the middle, and the ND100,000, that's the big boy. In simpler terms, that's a 6-stop, a 10-stop, and a 16.5 stop filter set. So now with this filter set, that would cover you for all types of long exposure photography right throughout the day from dawn to dusk. Now the great thing about this magnetic ND filter set is you're not dictated to in terms of what comes in the set. When you look at the Freewell website, and the link is in the description box below, you can tailor make your own filter set according to the type of photography or videography you're doing. For example, you might only want a couple of ND filters, but opt for a circular polarizer as a third filter. You can create up to a 9-pack of filters if you really wanted. Freewell allowed me to choose my own 3 filters I wanted to test and review. I've chosen these 3 filters because I believe this would be the perfect set covering me for all times of day doing long exposure photography. The light can get pretty harsh here in Australia, hence why I needed darker filters. For example, I'd use that 6-stop for things like blue hour. That's just before the sun comes up over the horizon or has gone down behind the horizon at sunset. The 10-stop for when the sun has just come over or just about to go down below the horizon. And the 16.5 stop could be used throughout the entire day, achieving exposures of 4 minutes or greater, depending on how bright the light is. With this Freewell magnetic ND filter system, the advantage over screw-in filters is that you can change filters in a matter of seconds. You can also get a magnetic filter cap, which comes in handy to protect the filters while they're on the camera. And you can also stack these filters very quickly and easily if you wished. Now the best thing to do when buying any sort of filters is to choose a set for your largest filter ring size from your lens collection. For example, my largest diameter filter is 82mm on my Nikon 14-30mm f4S lens. But a majority of my other lenses are 77mm. So instead of buying a second set of filters, it's far more easier and economical to buy something like step-up rings. This is a 77mm to 82mm step-up ring I'm using and is relatively cheap. So now I can use these filters very easily on all my other lenses. So hold on, before you say, oh, that's okay, I've got a whole bunch of step-up rings, I'll be able to put those magnetic filters into those rings. And I'm telling you this because I don't want you to make the same mistake that I made. This is the Nikon D850 camera I was using. I had the 16-35mm lens. Now, what I did was I used just a generic, oh, come on, focus for me. Focus, there you go. I used a generic 77 to 82mm step-up ring. I put the Freewell magnetic system into that ring. Now the problem what happened was I got really substantial vignetting from focal lengths between 16 and 20mm. Freewell also make magnetic step-up rings that allows you to place filters directly on the ring itself without having to use the other magnetic screw-in ring. And as you can see on the website, there's a ton of different sizes you can choose from. This eliminates that vignetting problem when shooting at wider focal lengths beyond 20mm. So yeah, don't make the same mistake I made. It's better that you go and get those Freewell magnetic step-up rings because they work much better with the filter system. Anyway guys, I've got the images from out in the field on my computer here. Let's go and check them out and see how well this filter system performed. Okay, so this is the first shot we're going to have a look at. This was taken with the Nikon Z7 with the 14 to 30mm lens, and it is at 14mm and it's an ISO 64 f11, and I'm pretty sure the shutter speed was at 1/160th of a second. So I took this shot so you can see what it's like straight out of the camera. Now let's put the 16.5 stop on the front. After doing my calculations for the long exposure, this shot ended up being 7 minutes and 45 seconds. The cloud is moving, the water has all smoothed out, but our foreground has stayed rock solid, pardon the pun. The colors are actually quite surprising. This actually took me back a bit. Normally, I've used a lot of different filters in the past, and I get this type of like a blue cast on most of the filters, but this one seems to be at the opposite end. This one has more of a warmer color to it. And let me just push in on some of these parts for you. Now, I was focused on the rocks right about here. It is pin sharp. The other thing I was looking for was any sort of vignetting. Now, with the Z7, you've got in-lens camera corrections turned on, so you don't really have to kind of like worry too much about vignetting. But when you put filters on the front, that could be a different story. So this is the 82mm 16.5 stop straight on the front of the lens. I could not see any sort of vignetting or clipping in the corners. Now let me show you what it looks like after I've done a little bit of post-processing to this shot. Now the reason why I haven't shown you the post-processing for these shots is because seriously, this video would end up being 30 or 40 minutes long. And as you know, if you watch my channel, I don't like making long videos. I know you guys are busy. You just want to see the quick results. This is what it's like. I've used quite a bit of dehaze here where I've cut through the glare in the cloud so the cloud becomes more defined. When I'm post-processing my shots, I find it far easier to introduce blue to a warmer shot than taking a more of a blue color cast shot and trying to add a warmer color. I don't know why, but it just seems easier. This is good. I mean, I like this, that these filters do put out a little bit of a warmer look. Okay, so now let's move on to our next shot. Now, my apologies, before I begin, this composition does not set the world on fire. And the reason being is because I was in a mega rush. Grabbed my D850, grabbed the filters, and I sprinted down to the back and quickly got a composition and took this shot. This shot was taken with the 6 stop. This is the ND64 on the front of the D850. This is the finished post-process shot. Let me show you what it looks like straight out of the D850, and we'll talk about that vignetting that I was getting. So this is a shot before any sort of post-processing. I've really clipped the corners with that filter. You can actually use a standard step-up ring. I noticed when I put this shot into Photoshop and I went down to optics and I clicked both on the chromatic aberration and the profile corrections for the lens, that literally got rid of that vignetting instantly, and there was only a little tiny bit left. So I guess you can actually use standard step-up rings, but for me personally, I would be going for those rings from Freewell. It would work much better in conjunction with those filters, and you wouldn't get this vignetting happening. It's completely up to you, but I just know what I do. You can just see the colors out of this raw shot before any sort of post-processing. I mean, it looks pretty good. I've exposed for the sky because, as most of you know, it's far easier to recover shadows than it is to recover highlights when you're post-processing. Let's move on to the next shot. This shot was taken with the Nikon D850 with the 16 to 35mm lens, straight out of camera. The settings are ISO 64 f11 and it's at 1/125th of a second. This shot was actually taken not too far away from those rocks because this is at Beachmere. I don't know if you watch my channel, but I go there sometimes to do some landscape photography. And I was having a really bad day because on this day I'd forgotten my L bracket and I totally misjudged the tide times. So the bridge that normally takes me to the other end of Beachmere, where I normally go and get these trees out in the water, it was completely washed out. But I thought, you know what, I'll take advantage of that. So I set up a shot where I was taking a shot of the bridge. That was going to be my subject and my inanimate object that stays rock steady. Now I knew the trees were blowing in the wind, so I was going to get some movement in the tops of those trees. So what I did was I put the 16.5 stop ND filter on the front, and I ended up getting an exposure of 7 minutes and 10 seconds. Okay, so this is what the image looks like after I've done a bit of post-processing on it. You can see the cloud has got that beautiful movement in it going across the sky. The water has been all beautifully smoothed out. But as I said, the trees, we've got movement in the tops of the trees. Sometimes that adds to the shot, sometimes it doesn't. But let's push into where I was focused on that bridge. I believe we haven't actually lost any sharpness. If anything, I think it's cut through the glare and it's actually improved it. That's a really big green tick for me when it comes to the Freewell ND filters. So with this image, when I looked at it, it screamed to me black and white. So what I did was I went all Ansel Adams on it and I turned it black and white and I really increased the contrast, and it's really given it that moody type look. And with that movement in the trees, I think it really adds to it when you've got something like black and white. See, again, look at the clarity where I've zoomed in on that bridge where I was focused tack sharp on the end of those concrete pylons. So I haven't lost any sort of image quality there coming out of these filters. All right, let's have a look at our last shot. Okay, so this was taken at a place called Woody Point Jetty. Now this was taken at 30 millimeters at f11, ISO 64, and the exposure time for this shot was 45 seconds. Now this is just before the sun, you can just see it in the background there, was going down behind the horizon. But I've got that type of movement happening in the sky, I've smoothed out the water. Now before you ask me in the comments, what app do you use on your phone to calculate the long exposures? I've actually made a very short video on that, and what I'll do is I'll leave it at the end of this video and you can check out a little bit later on. So again, this shot is ISO 64, f11, focused on that hut in the middle of the jetty there, and the sky was just going off. I've got the 10-stop Freewell ND filter on, and this exposure time was 3 minutes and 43 seconds. That's the beautiful thing I love about long exposure. When you're doing shots like this, it really does show the beauty of nature and the patterns it can create for you as a photographer. So just a quick summary. The great thing about these magnetic ND filters is they're so quick to use. They're very fast. You can just put them on, take them off. You need actually probably, I'd say, 2 hands, kind of like to take them off. That's not a con or a bad thing. I think that's a good thing, because the last thing you want is your filters to be popping off your lens when you're tilting down doing a shot. The only thing that I found with these particular filters, and I think this has got to become an industry standard with all filters, is that they introduce color coding. I know a lot of other manufacturers have started doing it. It makes it so much easier just to grab your filter out of the pouch and you know what you've got. When you've got little small writing on the side and it's a sunrise or a sunset and you're finding it hard, and I know some photographers use headlamps and you don't have to really worry about that type of thing, but for those that don't, it would just be nice to know that you can just reach in, grab the filter, and you know what you've got. So that's about my only little suggestion that I would improve these filters. Otherwise, they're very good. They're very slimline. Sharpness is very good. I don't lose any sort of image quality, as you've seen. Good job, Freewell filters. I think they are very, very good. Again, for any more information on these filters, I've actually left you a link to the Freewell website in the description box below. And if you have any more questions, by all means, leave them in the comments below and I'll try and answer them as best I can. Well guys, thank you so much for watching. Never stop creating, and I'll see you next time.